Hi.
Howdy.
Let's talk about some ships.
Woo.
I'm John Crewe, for those of you that don't know me, or harass me from YouTube comments.
I'm Stephen Hosmer.
And I'm Paul Jones.
We know who the fan favorite is then.
Pardon?
You're the fan favorite then.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to talk about quite a few ships today. Going to talk about two you know about, two you don't know about, and then a few more. So let's talk about things you do know about. So we'll start with the Anvil Carrack. Knew there was going to be one. So, obviously a very popular ship. I hope you all liked seeing it earlier, but let's just go back in time to the original origin story of it. Just trying to work out where I can actually see the thing by me. There it is. So it was one of the original crowdfunding goals. It's ex-military design, but released as surplus civilian stock. Comes with everything in the kitchen sink that you need for long-term exploration. It's got medical facilities, repair room, garage and hangar, charting and sensor suites, lots of fuel, and the modular storage cargo pods at the bottom.
So it was introduced as part of the crowdfunding, one of the original stretch goals in November of 2014, which was about 5 years ago. So it's been a while. We introduced it with a little choose-your-own-adventure mini-game on the website. And here's a couple of stats about that. It was about like 28 pages long, something like that, 26. And about 300, what was it?
300 different options.
Options,
go
yeah.
through, so.
300 little options.
How many people can remember that and went through that?
Wow, that's a lot.
That's quite a few.
Did anyone do all 300?
So you guys will be familiar with some of these concepts done way back in the day. Obviously, this was before we sort of had all our metrics worked out. So, we were building cool stuff. But there was a lot of things with the ship that we wanted to improve on. So, looking at, we look at this slide here, and there's things like the landing gear and the height of the ship, to name a few in this shot. So, basically, we're just going to run through a couple of images here and just sort of point out the things that we have tackled just recently. The Carrack came with a shutter system, and also that causes a few problems. So we've spent some time looking at that, and we'll show that in a little bit. We've also sort of taken a look at the back end, did a little bit of sort of styling and sort of unification, because obviously we're a little further along in the games. We're a couple more years further on, so we've got style guides now which help. And you can see here from the interior, it was a cool interior, and we've kept a lot of stuff, but it still didn't really sort of speak of that Anvil flavor, which has been sort of developed with the Valkyrie.
Terrapin.
Thank you, help me out there. So yeah, we've spent quite a bit of time just sort of tweaking it and working with with design and with the art team.
So that's the past, the very far past. Let's go slightly closer to the current day. So how do we get from those concept images to what you saw earlier today? So the first task was to actually do a full interior white box blockout, blocking in all the features that we'd promised with this, using all our metrics. That meant the ship got quite big. So it got to 170 meters, which at the time, sure, Foundry making ships big.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
So we'll just go through some of these. So this was the original layout of the bottom deck. Going up through the ship, you see the front is quite packed with things, but there's a lot of space in there. Then there's back and engineering, and then the observation deck. Not me personally.
Took me ages to put that together.
So there's quite a few downsides with making the ship just bigger for the sake of making it bigger. So we decided to try and get it back to actually the original size it was at concept, which was 123 meters.
Yeah, if we kept it that size, it wouldn't be able to fit on the large pads that we have, and it would only be able to spawn it where you could spawn like an 890 or Reclaimer, so we didn't really want to do that.
So yeah, all those 890 and Reclaimer owners that know the pain of having to travel somewhere to spawn their ship, Carrack owners would have had the same pain if we'd kept it like that. So we kept all the features. We just sort of shrunk them down a little bit and took out the corridor space between every single room. So as you can see, it's pretty similar. There's just no dead space between all the rooms now. Once we'd done a white box interior, though, there was still a lot of the interior that we had no idea what it was going to look like.
And this hasn't really sort of followed on sort of normal process. You guys are aware, sort of, with our latest ships, we are now sort of working towards getting the ships a lot closer to what they should be, so that by the time they get into the game, there should be less changes, less disappointments. And so basically, the ship team was already a good probably like 50% of the way through this ship. And as you guys know, I normally sort of work with the concept team, and we're working on other ships, and then a couple of requests start coming in. Oh, we need a little bit of help on this, and we need a little bit of help on that. So what you're going to see is sort of more sort of behind the scenes sort of stuff that we generally don't show. It's pretty raw, it's pretty unpolished. You get to see some of my really quick, rough stuff.
There's a lot of caveats in this.
Yeah, there is a lot of caveats. But overall, you'll get a bit of an insight into the general process. So here, I think we've got a caveat on here. This is a really quick. We're sort of experimenting with different ways of looking at the shutter system. Something that's, thank you. Like I said, it is on the slide there. It is a temp animation that I sort of quickly bashed out just to sort of as a proof of concept. You can see there that it's the old this sort of original glass and the sort of structure for the shutters. So this was more about just the large shapes and how they might fold back and kind of be optimal as well for the engine.
The original concept was like a roller garage door that went over it, and that's quite expensive in game because each one of those links has to be a bone. So you end up with a huge amount of bones to animate, and also just the mechanics of getting them down the struts and folding around all the shapes on such a small angular piece is incredibly hard.
Yeah, so there's definitely more work to do with this. Obviously, that's just the top section. We've got the bottom section to do, but these are all the sort of things that we'll give to the ship team. Be like, well, we're kind of thinking like this. So we don't work out exactly everything, and it still gives the artists and the animators just a little bit of creative freedom to sort of work out some more of the extra stuff. And so you guys will be familiar with this front end. And there's a lot of stuff in here that isn't what we'd class as Anvil anymore. Some of the shape language, especially at the front, with the curved. And I know you guys are you're big fans of struts. So I put this together. I thought you might like this. But joking aside. And as you will have seen in today's demo already, it's going to something a lot cleaner, basically. So the visibility is much better.
We actually, you can't see it in this image, but if you looked carefully at the demo earlier, there is a hexagonal pane of front glass rather than curved edges. So then that.
Yeah, so it's just harking back to it was even on the ballista as well, just that shape. Mm-hmm. And so you can see here, so we're working on the exterior, and the art team was struggling a little bit with some of the information. They were sort of essentially trying to redesign on the hoof and just sort of figure it out. And generally, you can lose quite a lot of time on that. So basically, the internal team jumped on this, and it's just reunifying the ships. You've got the familiar anvil circle that's in everything, and just sort of making that flow into the back of the ship, and generally just look a little more integrated. And same with this shot here. You can see I've literally pulled this off my PC. It's got all the sort of squiggles and drawings on it that we do on the real-time board, and this is really more just the front end, just sort of showing. It was more of a cleaning up process on the original sort of Carrack. There was a lot of what we call polygon cuts. So you select just a couple of polygons and you do an extrusion or a bevel, but it doesn't really make sense. We generally push the ships a lot more towards reality now. If there's a line or a cut or a panel change, it's there for a reason.
If you look at certain space films that are popular, they do a lot of that to just add noisy detail on their ships that don't actually do anything or have any purpose, but it looks cool, but it's pretty useless.
Yeah. So there's just a general sort of clear up of those lines from the front, and just working with the anvil style, bringing it into the front. The same with the underside there. It was a little bit noisy. It's sort of, when you have it in engine, it can often read, especially that front ramp that was all separated. And we also spent some time on the pods because those are changed, right?
Yeah, they are different from the concept, but we'll talk about those.
And then also, those of you will be familiar with this is the back end. And generally, most of the anvil ships now have sort of exposed or partially exposed engines. And it was just a matter of working on that back end and just bringing everything into line. So you really, when you look at this ship now, you're like, oh, okay, it's anvil. And when you see it next to its brothers and sisters, you can really see that DNA that's in these ships. So we did work on the interiors as well. It wasn't just the exterior. And again, some less polished stuff than you're normally used to seeing. In terms of corridors, there was a lot of, different shapes going on in the corridors.
There was a lot of artists working on this at various points, and whilst they all had the same sort of shape language, everyone's definition of this hexagon was slightly different. So every deck you went on, there was a slightly different angle between them. So it's just bringing
the pods. This is what's this area? This is the escape pods.
Escape pods behind the bridge.
And so there was quite a few sort of style things that were off topic. So again, it's just bringing it into line, just making it clearer, simpler palette, and really it's just about making it clear where you are. This is the gravity generator. I always forget this. Where's this looking out to?
Engine room. It looks down on the engine room.
Right, okay. So again, quick pass, just some line work, just a little bit of decals, just to give the team a little bit more of a direction, just to keep things unified. This is a cartography room. This is something we threw together some ideas. Ultimately, Nate wanted to just keep with the central
big
holographic
star map.
Yeah, star map. I did like those screens and everything. It makes it cool, but also it's also quite confusing because ultimately you want to see what's on the star map, don't you? It's not just the rule of cool. And then with the in the hangar, this was basically again just unifying the colours, keeping with the simple palette, and just basically putting on a little bit of red marking just to really make it clear. Okay, you're going out into a hard vacuum if you go out of this space. And again, just simple line work, some splashes of colour, and this is the repair room.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. What are we repairing in here?
All sorts of stuff.
All sorts of stuff. All right. And also the medical room. We've shown quite a bit of this on and off on.
Yeah, we've shown it on various things. If you remember, the scanner machine in the middle is sort of exposed, but
it was kind of open to everybody, wasn't
it?
So even if you were a patient, you were probably getting irradiated by whatever's coming out of the scanner. So we've kind of just put it behind glass. And the two doors to the side are just a sort of either the operator's room or a storeroom, I believe it is. And again, just a little bit of work on there. It's all very functional. It's nothing wow. So it's not something we'd normally release, but it's just all to keep the guys going and keep the vision intact.
Cool. So let's have a look where we are today, with an immediate swerve to something really far in the past. So this was the original concept bridge with this table, which is a hollow table like a lot of the other ships.
Yep.
So we started off here, then we changed it to a holosphere that spread across both decks, and we're like, that's not quite right. So we sort of have combined both into a holosphere and a hollow table. So it's circular, it projects a sphere, it will project all sorts of things to give the same impact. Other big changes on the bridge, the concept had a spiral staircase from the lower deck to the upper deck, but that's now an elevator. That's purely for metrics reasons. The space needed for our characters to traverse up a spiral staircase would have pretty much taken up that entire gap between those two seats. And again, if we wanted to keep it, the ship needs to get bigger, wider, we go back round in circles again. Cargo pods, we talked about briefly. So these have had some big changes. They're still swappable, so the default version was going to come with these cargo pods in particular, but down the line we're going to let you swap them out for other types of cargo pods, other types of modules that will go into some point in the future.
Yeah, they're similarly designed to the ones on the Caterpillar, so it's got that gantry up top, and then we also made it so the sides will open up so that you can access space or the outside from them.
Yeah, the original concepts had the openings to the outside beyond the faces that connect in between them, which is great when they're on the ground, but completely useless in space. So whilst these are recessed inside the ship, they do double clamshell open, so the bottom can open and then you can access these whilst in space or flying or do things like people do in the Caterpillar and shoot out of them.
Yeah.
Next up, turrets. So it had 4 turrets in the original spec. It's still got 4 turrets. They've got the same sort of guns on them. The sideball turrets are manned. We did quite a lot of work on those. And the top turret is now remote. The bottom is manned. Again, that was a change due to the layout of the ship. If we'd kept the top turret manned, there would have been this just entrance point randomly in the middle of a corridor. So making that remote frees up that space. And then the manned turret is accessible from the main elevator shaft that goes up and down the ship.
And here we're showing off a little bit of a video where we've made the turrets on the side to be like the hammerhead turrets so that you get this greater degree of control and angle.
We wanted to keep the aesthetic of the original concept turrets, but without this, they would have moved about 10 degrees in either direction, which is
this is a nice
suboptimal.
solution.
Plus you've got those size 4 guns on there,
Yeah,
which
they're big guns now.
pretty decent.
So this is the top turret that's now remote. Again, packing size 4 guns. Moving through the interior, habitation, we saw that earlier. So it's an ex-military ship, so it shares its habitation areas with the crew. Captain has his own captain's quarters, which I can confirm doesn't have a huge bathroom. It's the bedroom's a bit bigger, the bathroom's a bit smaller.
Yeah,
The desk and room for shouting at subordinates is equally sized. We've got the hexagonal pool table that you saw earlier.
And this is, there's a nice contrast here. We're sort of moving to the softer, warmer lighting. This is habitation, right? You're going from the sort of almost scientific exploration part of the ships, the dark greys. But then when you go into habitation, you want something a little lighter, something a little less oppressive. You've got the familiar anvil shapes in there, and it should be in quite a nice area just to sort of maneuver around.
It's got a different aesthetic, like you say. It's very white, creamy, light grey versus the harsh dark grey of the rest of the ship.
Yeah. It's the greys we were talking about.
Yeah. It's the drone room, which we sort of briefly whisked past in the demo earlier today. So we have 4 drones for the ship, and there's 2 drone operators. You can see one, which is the sort of lit area at the back, and there's one behind where the camera is. And I'm going to make full use of there being a laser pointer on the desk. That if Steve wants to talk about where they go.
There's the track on the top so that they slide out, and then you can also repair them in that section over there. Yeah, and then they also slide down, and they can be deployed from there.
So this is a sealed unit here that they come into and go 90 degrees, and they go launched out into space. They recovered the same way. It's sealed, so you don't vent this room, which is where you're sat operating them, which would be a very bad time for all involved. Engineering, which got an unexpected cheer when we were going through the demo earlier. It's just a very cool looking room.
Yeah, it's always like a bit of a hero room, the engineering rooms. I mean,
big steaming, dark.
You kind of want it to feel special.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the gravity generators up there a little bit.
So that's actually where that window, the gravity generator room, looks out of.
Yeah.
Biggest change is the landing gear from what we had at the start. This is what you've changed on here, so I don't know what's going to happen now when I press this button.
You will have to click it, and then it will animate it. But you guys will know we went through. At least it should work. There we go. We went through several options. We've seen the long-legged version. Then we had do we have the sausage dog version? Looks like maybe that got taken out. With the little legs.
We'll not remember the sausage dog version. Forget that from history.
I don't know. I like Dachshund, so that was my favorite.
But I think this is the best. This is a really nice solution.
Yeah, gives a really nice silhouette. We don't tend to do a lot of 3 points of contact landing gears on big ships, just because they're so big. But this is a really big triangular sort of footprint, so works well for this.
Yep.
Then the question everybody wants to know, which hopefully you've all heard by now, is February next year. The reason it's not coming out in 3A is we just needed more time on it, and we didn't want to release a half-finished ship, especially one as anticipated as this. I hope you'll all agree that that would be not the ideal outcome of just waiting so long for such an important ship and then finding a few of the rooms were not there. So February next year.
Yeah.
Pass you over to Steve to talk about something else.
So there's, I guess, a little something that's coming with the Carrack, and that is the Anvil Pisces. What is the Anvil Pisces? Well, it's actually two ships. It's the regular Anvil Pisces, along with it comes the C8X Expedition version of the Pisces. These are the initial stats for the Pisces, the ones that we first designed them around. It's got one pilot. It's got 2 jump seats. It's got some. It's pretty small. It's if like an arrow will fit into your ship, then this will fit into that ship also.
We built this backwards from building the Carrack's hangar bays because the Carrack's hangar bay is designed to fit this. I'm not going to say what fits in the Carrack hangar bay. I'll leave that to everyone else to find out. But we only really intend this to fit in the Carrack's hangar bay.
And then it's got 4 SCU if you want to carry some stuff. And one of the biggest features is the quantum drive.
Yeah, it is not a snub. It is a valid small exploration ship.
Yeah. And then it's got some weapons and some missiles, countermeasures, what have you.
Yeah.
And then the expedition version is
so in lore, the C8, the one you just saw, is what Anvil released with the Carrack, sort of the extra military surplus version. When Anvil were actually making this back in the past, this is the version they wanted to include, but trying to sell military goods to civilians was apparently bad in the old days. But now the Vandal are kicking around and the UE Militia Mobilization Initiative is out. The same initiative that gave us the Polaris, they've been allowed to sell this. So it's pretty much the same ship. You get a sweet white paint job and a pair of extra size 1 guns on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, looks good. So we're going to talk a little bit about the concept process, give you guys a look behind the curtain on this one. When we started this one, we had a slightly different brief, and we'll go through that. I'll reveal it as we move on. And so this is a sort of typical thing that we'll put together. This is something I put together a couple of years ago, but it's just to remind the artists the kind of things that we sort of look for for the signature DNA of in this case, Amble ships. So obviously you've got the circular motif that's always in the center, large intakes, and then a sort of truncated front nose, and line work. Generally sort of decals, sounds a bit crazy, but they always go from left to right, or they don't return back on themselves, always go from start to finish. It's an important thing for us. Everyone else is like, whatever. And so I think basically this is sort of the initial pass. So this is basically sort of essentially kit bashing, and you will have those of you may have seen Sarah do a little talk the other week with some ship stuff. This is kind of a similar sort of process, and so you can see a lot of other ships in here, and it's really just a sort of rough process just to start, just to get the mind working about, okay, what is it that we're looking for? Because everybody's idea of this kind of craft is different. And so it's just a matter of, okay. And then, so we work together, and I generally do the first round of culling, and then it's, it's sort of my job to work with the concept artist, and we basically get some options that Chris can have a look at. And so these were the 4 options that we presented to Chris. And in the top left there, you can see where we came from. But there's some other cool ones in there. There's a little stubby one on the bottom right that's kind of cute. But ultimately, Chris was more in favour of top left, and so from that we'll take that. You can see in this one it's got the narrower cockpit, and we were kind of working to a slightly different brief at this point. It was going to be, was it 2
SCU.
2 SCU.
Yeah, and 3 full operator seats, so seats with screens and MFDs.
Yeah.
And so it was a tight squeeze. I mean, that space in the carrack wasn't particularly large, so we knew this needed fold. The wings needed to fold, but also with the quantum drive,
yep,
there was a lot of components to squeeze into this thing, and 3 people. So poor old Sarah was, backwards and forwards on this, and trying to use other animation templates, so we're not creating extra work for other teams. And so we were continuing along quite nicely, and we get to the review, and then it's like, oh no, it's not got enough. Yeah, there's not enough SCU in this thing.
Need more cargo.
So this is where I hand over back to design, and you can chat about how we got from what we came up with to what it needed to be.
We started with 2 SCU, and then somewhere along the line was like, we need 4. So 4's a good number.
Yeah.
Where are we going to fit it?
So I lost a little extra hair, I think, when we got that news.
And we'd done a few things. This is how it was as 2 SCU. So doubling it, someone's going to have quite a cramped ride in the back there. So we tried a few options, like 2 seats up the front. 2 seats up the front, then you need the glass to be extra wide. We're like, well, that looks cool, so we'll keep that. And we just couldn't fit those extra seats in. There was animation issues. It was
like trying to get into the pilot seat while the other seat was there, and then both of you getting out at the same time. You just go right into each other. It just wasn't working.
Yeah, so we changed those operator seats to jump seats and stuck them right behind the pilot seat. You get up into the space behind the pilot seat, which then allowed us to move the cargo bay forward. So it can fit 4 SCU. It looks more than 4 SCU in there, but that is only 4 SCU. It's a very tiny ship inside. And then there's a nice little labeled version of it.
Yeah, I think it's a good option.
So when's it coming out? Accidentally pressed the button too quick there, so I was like, ugh. So yeah, this will be in the 372 patch, which is, if it's not live already, will be live, and then it will be available for pledging tonight, tomorrow, and then it's just unlocked in your account. So that's the present. Let's look a bit towards the future. There's this weird, mysterious thing in your brochures that you're probably wondering what on earth it is. So let's talk about that. Nervous applause. It's like, oh. It's the Kraken Privateer. So this is not just a normal Kraken.
So what is it then? It's a variant of the Kraken, and it's kind of like a mobile space station where you can have little shops and you can sell stuff to people. So in order to fit those shops in, you kind of take out a bunch of the cargo space.
So let's have a look at how on earth we do that internally. So this is a cutaway of the base Kraken. So this is the regular Kraken that we unveiled last year. You've got your huge amount of cargo, extra fuel, you've got your Dragonfly Bay. And then this is a close-up of that. So the Kraken Privateer is a full variant. It is not a modular swap because of the internal geometry changes. This next transition will make it look like it is a very simple swap, but trust me, there's a huge amount of interior changes that go on in here. So we swap out the main cargo bay for 8 shops, and then the Dragonfly Bay for 2 more shops, and then there's extra habitation modules put in there. So we're going to look at some of the actual pretty images for this.
Yeah, so let's take a look at some of the visuals. So this is the main marketplace, the public market. And this is a sort of idea of it sort of converted. So you can see there the modular shops. We've even stuck in a schmaltz beer that's just hanging above the hanger there, just for the thirsty drinkers. But it kind of gives you just a good flavor of what it might be like in there. And you can kind of see right at the back where you can see the sort of Kraken logo. Just above there, there's a it's kind of like the captain of the ship. It's the crow's nest. So if you're the owner of the ship, you can be looking out over your over the people, over the marketplace. Yeah. So I think it'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. So as I said before, it's going to replace the main cargo hold, and you're going to get 8 shops. It kind of uses the modularity system that we have for the space stations, but they're going to be smaller than those, so it's not going to be the exact same shops. You're going to be able to hire NPC crew to run the shops, and it's kind of a public space, so you got to be careful with what you're stocking and selling there.
No stocking widow in good locations. However,
speaking of which, so this section here is where the Dragonfly bays were, but this has been refitted. So this is the private market, and there's two shops in here essentially. I really wanted to pack it out with more shops, but it was going to sort of like over
turn into a shopping mall.
Yeah, basically. And we also need space for sort of AI and player navigation, but it gives you an idea of maybe the slightly seedier vibe if you want to go that direction with your ship.
So this is the private market. It's behind closed doors, so it requires security access from the ship's captain to get in here. Places the Dragonfly bays. There's only 2 shops, and because it's invite only, this area does not have to abide by the local restrictions because the local security can't get in here. So if you've got some more illicit wares, then you can do them in here and make a bit more profit that way.
You could also do perfectly legal stuff up here.
If you want. It's just giving you the choice.
And this is the final fitted out area. So in the original Kraken, this is sort of large storage tanks, but they've been ripped out, replaced with these extra habs. So it should be a pretty cool sort of communal area. And screens, hopefully maybe some live stats of the marketplace. So you can be sitting there having a beer, chatting to your friends, and just sort of see what's going on in the rest of the ship.
Yep, there's 10 extra hubs, there's 10 shops. Each NPC needs somewhere to live on board, and we didn't want them taken away from the existing hubs that are on board the ship, because those are there for essentially the people that are flying their ships to the station and staying there. Not a great deal more to say about that.
Yeah. Here's a little schematic of what it's going to look like, the setup. You've got your private shops up top with their own little storage below them. And then you've got the 8 shops in the main cargo bay, with the secondary cargo bay being the storage for those shops.
And I am now going to try and explain shopping in 60 seconds whilst not being Tony Zurek. So, the basic process for this is you have your Kraken privateer. The shops are modular, as you mentioned. They're, think, converted cargo container crates that have shops built into them. The Kraken will come with a default generic selection. If you want to change them down the line, feel free. So you pick your shop archetype. Like, I'm going to pick my clothing shop archetype. I put it in shop 1 slot. I hire Paul, my shopkeeper, to run that shop. Pay him 1 UEC a day to do that.
Cheapskate.
I buy 500 Big Benny's hats, which takes up so many SEU of space, and I put it in shop 1's cargo grid. So each shop has its own cargo grid. You can't pool them all together and have one shop selling 1 million things. They're all split up. When that shop's cargo grid is empty, you need to go replenish it. You set your profit margins on them, plus or minus, if you really want to do that. And then hopefully make some profit. Mm-hmm. And for those merchantman owners out there, the merchantman is going to work in essentially the same way. They have shops, you buy stock, the stock is held in the cargo grid along with shared just cargo space, and the shops use that. Feel free to talk to Tony about any of this afterwards. So yeah, there's a quick, very high-level overview of the 2 variants of the Kraken. Privateer has the 10 shops. It still has 768 SEU of cargo, which is a not insignificant amount of cargo, and it does lose the Dragonfly bays. So we think of it as like the mobile lawful space station, or less lawful, if that's your thing. The regular Kraken has 3,792 SEU of cargo, which is a lot of cargo. So that's slightly less than a whole sea. And it has Dragonfly bays, and we think of that one as sort of the mobile combat outpost. So if you want to be a Kraken owner, you've got sort of 2 paths to go down there. So that's the future. Let's talk about a bit more in the future. So we're going to do something that we've never done before. And this is stuff we do internally, but you guys have never really been involved in this process at this point. So we're going to pitch 4 ideas for future vehicles or ships that we're considering doing. We're going to give you a high-level breakdown of them. We've had the concept guys knock up some really quick sketches just to sell it, just like Paul showed earlier, where we have a 2D thumbnail sketch of them, and we go, yep, that one looks cool, that's terrible. And then we'll hopefully have time for a very short Q&A at the end on those ships. So if you've got some questions for one of those 4 ships we're about to show you, we'll try and come up with some answers for them, because we have got no idea what you're going to think of these. And then we'll do the noisometer to see.
So we want a little bit of crowd participation, sort of help with choosing favorite one. So that'll be like Chris has done in the past, and we'll run through each one separately, and you guys make as much noise as you want for each one, and between the 3 of us, we'll try and figure out which one is the loudest.
And if I don't hear the ship team who are hiding at the back of the hall, the loudest out of everyone, it goes on their performance reviews. So, first up.
First up is the ground mining vehicle. This is a ground vehicle that's made by an industrial manufacturer, something like MISC or Argo. It should hold about 1 to 2 players, and it should be probably smaller than an Ursa rover, so you can fit it on any of your ships, basically. It also has storage for your personal commodity inventory, so that you can take the things that you mine and you can put them into this. It should also aid in your detection of mineable objects, so you can scan around and find them. And then it also has a little laser on it, so that you can mine little personal FPS mining nodes.
That one in the middle does look like it's holding a Wacom tablet pen.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah. We can do a deal.
For me, I've picked a Xian Cargo ship. So something that is not from the current Xian manufacturers that we have at the moment. So I'm going to now butcher the pronunciation of it.
We asked Sherry several times.
We talked to Sherry many times and have still messed it up. Multi-crew, and it's one of these ships that sort of fills out the verse. We have the whole series, we have the freelancers, we have the caterpillars. Just like the real world, you just have tons of vehicles on the highway, freeway, interstate, whatever you call it in your country. And that makes up the bulk of traffic, so we should have a variety of ships. Around 300 SEU, that's sort of the sweet spot between something that is profitable without being unwieldy to unload and manage. And yeah, it's competitors to the Hull B and Freelancer Max. So it's a bit more than Freelancer Max. My brain has failed me on the Hull B's cargo capacity. It's less than the Caterpillar.
Yeah, we'll let you off.
Yeah.
We'll let you off.
It's been a long day.
So for me, the Tavaran light fighter, I mean, I'm really digging what the team have been doing with the Prowler. You guys probably will have seen it on some of the behind the scenes and how the ship's been developing. And so I think there's a lot of potential for this ship. So this one would be an escort fighter to the Prowler. Obviously, the sort of advanced shield tech, 2 large S4 mounts. Nothing else, but other than I can see it looking super cool. So I can see good potential in that.
And lastly,
the starter refinery ship. So this would be a one-man crew, but it would have a living quarters, and it would have a tractor beam that would grab those pods. So that we have these like standard pods that are on the Prospector right now, and then so it could grab those off the Prospector, and then it would hook up into it, and you'd be able to refine the materials that you mine from the Prospector, and then store those on board.
so hopefully there's someone that's going to come around with a microphone or something, because we didn't rehearse this bit. Otherwise, we're just going to start pointing at people. Oh, the lights are up.
People.
So we'll have a few questions, and only on these 4 ships.
Hi. With the Tavaran light fighter, would it be like a snub, do you think, or more like anvil arrow kind of size?
It definitely won't be a snub.
Yeah.
It'll
be more of an arrow size.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it would have all of the amenities that an arrow would have.
And quantum drive and...
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a guy over here on the left.
The refinery can maybe dock to the Prospector?
Probably not dock to the Prospector, but the pods the Prospector has, we want to make be the universal sort of harvestable material. So they'll just be dumped in places, and this ship can pick them up.
Hi, I would like to ask, wouldn't it be easier just to take a rover, remove the passenger compartment, put ore in it, mining laser on top, and you have your mining car?
We could do something like that, but the rover right now, I don't think it's set up to have the power requirements that the mining laser would use, and then we'd have to build something that would take the personal commodity inventory.
Yeah, the rover is actually quite large for its size, so for the ground mining vehicle, we want to have it fit in things like the Cutlass and the Freelancer easily, just so it has that easy accessibility across all the ships.
With the Tavaran light fighter, do you see it having the same sort of cockpit system as the Prowler, where it's the one-way glass almost?
Yeah, definitely. That's kind of the signature of those ships, and we'd also have the sort of the 3D printed tree structure that's forming, and sort of you'll see it on the inside and sort of coming out to the outside. So I think that could be pretty cool.
Hello.
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 Why would I want to get the refinery ship over getting a mining ship and then using a refinery facility?
Because you'd have to pay the refining facility, whereas if you bought this ship on your own, you'd be able to do all that process yourself, and you'd kind of save yourself that middleman.
You can also cut down on travel time. If you're mining somewhere and you have to go to the other side of the system to get to the refinery, you could have a friend in this refinery ship, or you could be in that role, and you could literally be parked next to a fleet of prospectors, and you're just shuttling it around, saving on time.
Hey, isn't it better to focus on the alien ships so that as we're getting approaching launch, we've got the faction encounters more fleshed out? Because there's only a few of each of the alien ships at the moment.
That's a good question.
I didn't hear the start of it. I just heard aliens. So,
It was basically, wouldn't it be better to sort of focus more on the alien stuff rather than more, the traditional human stuff?
perfectly valid.
We haven't got
We've
much.
got 2 aliens up here for sort of that reason that we've got a lot of Aegis ships, got a lot of Anvil ships, got a lot of Mist ships. The alien ships are always interesting, and they sort of bring the world to life.
Yeah, and if you know how long the Banner Defender took, though, it's like it takes a little longer to kind of figure out that style and how they're different and what goes into them. So like right now we're working that out, but we'd like to make it as fast as we make the Anvil and the Aegis ships at this point, but we're not quite at that point.
In regards to the refinery ship, you've got the process for the mining vessel going to the refinery ship, like in space. Will there be a third option, a third part of the process where we could then take the refinery into a transport, and so we can have the 3-layer of mine, refine, and then transport to sell? Would that be something that's been considered?
Yeah, if we reuse the same sort of pod system for the mining ships to have and the refinery ship to use similar versions of that, then they can then be detached and put in a cargo ship. So they're actually to SEU metric, so they would be able to stack inside. I think we just take one more question, because we've got a few more things that everyone who just left is going to miss.
Yeah, it's a pity they left, because they kind of missed probably the best part.
Yeah. Sucks to be them.
I have actually a suggestion for the mining vehicle. Because it looks like very small, it looks like it has to have to inherit a lot of machinery or tech inside. How about the 2 people are not inside of the vehicle, but can hold onto it like on a garbage truck, something like that, and can control it from the outside, like more industrial feel.
It's definitely going to be tight space-wise to do like two people sat inside it. Is already getting on to be wider than most ships can take. So we'd definitely.
It's a good idea. I think there's a lot of opportunity for some creative thinking with that. Definitely.
Right. So, for those of you who are left now, have to shout twice as loud. Here are the 4 options again. So, how do we want to do this?
We can. So I guess we're just going to start at the start.
Yeah.
So. Definitely, everybody, so the way this works, like I said, we're going to start at A, and if you want A, make as much noise as you can, because we're just going to base this off the noise and to figure out which one wins.
Legal have asked me to make sure that we don't commit to anything here. We'll take it into consideration.
So for A, anybody who wants A, make your noise now.
Not bad.
That's a pretty good noise. So for B, anybody who wants B, which is the Xian small cargo, make your noise.
It's going to be hard.
Yeah.
I still think A is maybe winning
at
the moment.
Yeah.
So for the Tavaran light fighter C, let's have some noise. And for D, the
refinery.
I need my glasses on. Small refinery. So make a noise for D if you want D.
That was not expected.
I think we can safely say that was D.
Yeah. So, one final thing before we go. There's something else in the brochure that was teased, and we put it on a Spectrum post last night, which is the Argo Mole. So, this is a multi-crew mining ship. The Mole stands for Multi-Operator Laser Extractor. It's a 4-person crew, 3 mining cabs, 1 pilot. The mining cabs are all on you can see the front one here is extended out, the side ones also extend out. So you can mine 3 things independently, or 3 of you could mine the same thing if it's one of those particularly really hard lumps of rock that needs multiple prospectors to do. This can do it in one go. It has double the capacity of the prospector, uses the same pods underneath. There's 8 of them in a row with the extra spares on the underside of it. You can't particularly clearly see it because it's hidden behind that front VTOL thruster. And yeah, we'll be talking more about this in the coming weeks. You might see a bit of it in the Jax trailer. So when are we going to see this ship? So it's coming in 3.8. I think we finally managed to keep a ship secret throughout all the live patches.
It took a lot of work.
Took a lot of detective work and reverse engineering and trying to figure out how you guys were finding out everything. But possibly got on top of that. And that's it. So thanks for coming. Thanks for staying.